Hi, very good morning. I'm Dr. Janak Patel. I'm MD General Physician. I'm not a cardiologist. I'm still a student. Whatever I'm gathering knowledge from internet, websites, etc., I'm sharing with you. Today we'll be discussing on one of the another congenital heart disease, which is acyanotic, but we call stenotic heart disease, that is coarctation of aorta. The meaning is very simple. It is involvement of the aorta where you get a sudden narrowing of a aorta. So that is called as coarctation of aorta. So by definition, it is a narrowing of aorta at a different points, varying points, anywhere from transverse arch up to iliac bifurcation. The most common is close to the duct, that is insertion of the duct. So if it is before, we call preductal. If it is at the insertion, we call ductal. And if it is after the duct insertion, we call postductal. So it is basically divided according to the site wise and in relation to the duct into three groups: preductal, ductal, and postductal. So there are some terminology which are commonly utilized in this. Depending upon the narrowing, we call mild, moderate, and severe. Means if there is a very tight narrowing, then we call severe. And if there is a minimal narrowing, we call it a mild one. Depending upon the site, most common is in the arch of aorta. Occasionally you get in descending aorta or in abdominal aorta. By and large, in relation to subclavian, we call pre-subclavian, means the narrowing is before the subclavian. You can see here the narrowing, this is left subclavian, so this is after subclavian, so it is called post subclavian, meaning the right upper limb and left upper limb will receive a good quantity of blood, but the artery after that subclavian, means two lower limb, will receive less blood because of coarctation. Relation to the duct: ductal, preductal, and postductal. There is another word utilized, is infantile and adult variety. We'll just tell you that particular part. If it is a long segment which is being involved, then it is called tubular hypoplasia. And if there is a total end and it is not connected to the distal part of aorta, then it is called interrupted variety. If there is a one single narrowing, we call single, or if there are multiple narrowing, we call multiple variety. If it is pure coarctation only and there is no other associated congenital heart disease, we call as isolated. And if it is associated, coarctation is there very frequently with aortic stenosis. Second common is ASD, VSD, and then comes PDA. So any one of these permutation combination can be present along with coarctation. Then we call coarctation associated with another congenital heart disease. So these are the some of the terms which are being commonly utilized while labeling a coarctation of aorta. Preductal means narrowing is proximal to the duct, but before duct insertion into aorta. Ductal coarctation means narrowing occurs at the insertion of the ductus arteriosus, and postductal means narrowing is distal to insertion of the ductus arteriosus. It is almost 5% of the congenital heart disease. Postductal is very frequently adult type, and it is distal to ductus arteriosus or ligamentum arteriosus. Juxta word is very frequently infantile variety, and it will give rise to hypoplasia of aortic arch, good number of time aortic isthmus also, and it is very close to duct. You can have in 95% of person with aortic arch interruption will have a PDA, and 50% will have a VSD, because then only the blood circulation can be there, which will help to get oxygenated blood, and that is how oxygenated blood can be given to different parts of the body. So if there is an aortic arch interruption, 95% of the person will have a PDA, and 50% of the person with aortic arch interruption will have VSD. Preductal type will have PDA, which will be patent and large, because this is required to provide a blood flow to lower extremity. So in a preductal variety, because of PDA being patent, then only the blood will supply to the distal part after the coarctation. There will be tubular narrowing of the isthmus. There is no self-like narrowing of aorta, minimal post-stenotic dilatation of aorta, and minor enlargement of the intercostal arteries. This is very typical in a preductal variety. While in a postductal variety, the duct is closed. There is no longer shunt which will be taking place at the level of duct. There is no narrowing of the isthmus. There is self-like narrowing with an aorta in a juxtaductal position. Post-stenotic and pre-stenotic aorta is dilated. Intercostal arteries are grossly dilated, because the blood circulation can take place only by collaterals, while here the blood perfusion can be there by patent duct. Hence, the intercostal arteries are only mildly dilated or mild enlargement of intercostal vessels, while in a postductal variety of coarctation, because duct is closed, the perfusion to the lower limb can take place via intercostal arteries, and there will be pre-stenotic and post-stenotic dilatation of aorta, which will not be seen particularly in preductal variety, because there will be very minimal dilatation of aorta. So this is at the duct. If it is narrowing here, it is called preductal, because this is the opening of the duct. If it is at the level of duct, it is called ductal. And if it is after duct, usually this duct closes. So now circulation can take place from collaterals only. But if it is preductal, circulation can take place via this duct, patent duct. And because it can take via the patent duct, there will be good flow from pulmonary artery into post-stenotic part, and that will have good perfusion, and because of that you will not have post-stenotic dilatation, much amount of post-stenotic dilatation, and intercostal artery will be not much dilated, and this will be very typical in a patent ductus if the person has got a preductal variety. Indirectly, this is the pathophysiology. These are all the different varieties. You can see this is before the duct combines. So this is preductal. This is at the duct. This is after the duct. This is postductal. So this is preductal, postductal, and this is at the duct. At the duct. Now, if you look at the isthmus part, at the isthmus, it is called at the isthmus. So this is a long portion. Here you can see that this is interruption, where now from here onwards there is no perfusion to the distal part of aorta. So this will be interruption, and in interruption now blood flow has to be from the duct into the aorta. You can see from duct into the aorta. You can have subclavian also, left subclavian or common carotid arising from that. These are all different types of anomaly you can have right at the birth only. There are two another terms which are being utilized, is called infantile variety and adult variety. In an infantile variety, arch is hypoplastic. Because arch is hypoplastic, and that is associated with coarctation. This is called infantile variety. While in adult variety, it is very frequently juxtaductal coarctation, where it is a mild variety and it is commonly recognized until in a childhood. That's why this is usually called as adult variety, while this is a severe variety where there is an arch hypoplasia and there is an coarctation, and being a severe variety, it is recognized very early in early infancy. That's why the word utilized is infantile variety. While this adult variety, it is a mild variety, so it is recognized late, hence it is also called as an adult variety. So this will be infantile variety because this is very severe. Here you can see this is a mild variety and by and large it is postductal. Preductal are usually severe variety and they are called infantile, while this is called adult variety. Because of narrowing and if it is duct is closed, now the circulation can take place only by what we call as a collaterals. And through that collaterals, the most common collaterals are intercostal arteries. And when intercostal arteries are markedly dilated, you will have a dilated intercostal artery, you will have a Sussman sign positive, and because of this dilated intercostal artery, you will have a notching in the ribs, particularly second, third, fourth intercostal space ribs. So this is very peculiar what you will come across in a person with what we call is a postductal variety, where the duct will be now stenosed or will be not working. It will be atrophic. We call ligamentum arteriosum. This postductal variety will have a dilated intercostal vessels, and because of this dilated intercostal vessel, you will see pulsation in the intercostal space. We label that as a Sussman sign, and because of dilated and pulsatile intercostal vessels, it will start producing notching in the ribs, lower part of the lower surface of the ribs. You will have a notching we call as a rib notching, and it is very commonly seen in a third and fourth intercostal space. Surgical classification is on the basis of the outcome. Patient with the isolated coarctation group 1, with VSD group 2, and with complex intracardiac abnormality other than simple VSD is called group 3. These are some of the common. You will have a associated pathology like collateral circulation will be there. There will be aneurysmal formation of intercostal vessels, particularly third and fourth intercostal arteries, where you will have a rib notching. Coronary artery dilatation and tortuosity can be there due to left ventricular hypertrophy. Aortic valve can be stenosed and it is very frequently bicuspid aortic valve. Intracranial aneurysm will be very frequently present called Barry aneurysm, and it can be associated with other cardiac anomaly like VSD, ASD, PDA or aortic stenosis. Those are the common anomalies. So these are some of the associated pathophysiology which you can come across. As far as the etiology is concerned, the most common etiology is Turner syndrome, we call XO. It is almost always, we say, juxtaductal in position 98% of the time. It is twice common in male as compared to female. 25% of the patient with Turner syndrome will have a coarctation of aorta. And we already mentioned that it will be very frequently associated with bicuspid aortic valve, and which can be stenosed, and almost it is seen in 50% of the person with coarctation of aorta. VSD, ASD and PDA will be another common associated defects. In a postductal variety, usually PDA is not present, while in a preductal variety, PDA is usually present. So these are the common associated defects which can be there. It is almost accounting for 6 to 8% of congenital heart disease. We have already told you that it is 2 times more common as compared to females. Male 2 times more common as compared to females. Almost they say that up to 5:1 ratio can be also seen. It is very commonly seen in Turner syndrome, which can be sporadic or familiar. Left ventricular outlet obstruction can be another abnormality which can be seen along with coarctation of aorta. We have already mentioned VSD, ASD, bicuspid aortic stenosis. Rarely you can come across mitral stenosis, and you can come across what we call as a Berry aneurysms. You can divide also into congenital variety and acquired variety. Very rarely we come across an acquired variety. Classical we call as a arthritis, or we call inflammation, or also word utilized is autoimmune. It is called Takayasu, which can be there in the mid-thoracic region or in the abdominal aorta, and very rarely because of severe atherosclerosis. So this will be another group which can be there, we call as an acquired variety groups, where two common diseases, Takayasu and atherosclerosis, can produce almost like coarctation of aorta. Now it is very simple that congenital variety is right present from birth, while acquired is secondary due to inflammation like arthritis, classical example Takayasu, or because of severe atherosclerosis producing a tight narrowing. So this will be an acquired variety, but in a congenital variety, depending on pre-subclavian, post-subclavian, or preductal, postductal, etc. But we'll be using the word pre-subclavian and post-subclavian. Now, already we have discussed before that in a pre-subclavian variety, if coarctation is before the left subclavian, then there will be increased blood flow, increased pressure in the right upper extremity. There will be increased blood flow in right upper extremity as well as into both internal carotid arteries or common carotid arteries. But because of narrowing, distal to the narrowing, there will be decreased blood flow. So there will be decreased blood supply to the left upper limb and to lower limb. So there will be radial delay as well as radiofemoral delay, depending upon the severity of stenotics, because if it is very severe enough, the collaterals will be more dilated, and distal to coarctation there will be decreased blood flow which will be supplied by collaterals. So that will be very common. So in an infantile variety, very frequently you will get a post-stenotic dilatation and pre-stenotic dilatation, and you will have a lot of collaterals. Particularly intercostal arteries will have a lot of collaterals, dilated intercostal arteries. So 98% of all coarctation at the segment of aorta adjacent to the ductus arteriosus. And in a variety where you get what we call as a preductal, ductus arteriosus remains patent. And if a ductus arteriosus is patent and dilated, then blood flow will be from pulmonary artery via duct into the post-stenotic part. And in that case, intercostal blood vessels will not be much dilated, and as they are not much dilated, you may not have a intercostal artery pulsation and you may not have rib notching. But if it is post-ductal, then in that case the duct is completely closed. We call ligamentum arteriosum. So post-stenotic part, you will have a good amount of collaterals. You will have a pre-stenotic and post-stenotic dilatation, and that will be the very common finding. So that is what thing will be happening in a coarctation of aorta. In a right upper limb, because there is an increased resistance to the blood flow across the stenotic part, there is increased peripheral vascular resistance, and because of that, left ventricle has to do overwork. Left ventricle undergoes hypertrophy. LV pressure is elevated, and also the pressure in the aorta is also elevated. leading to systolic hypertension. So you will have a hypertension in right upper limb. In a post-stenotic part, if a left subclavian is after arising from post-stenotic portion, then the blood pressure in the left upper limb and two lower limb will be low. But if it is a post-subclavian coarctation, then both upper limb the blood pressure will be high and both lower limb the blood pressure will be low. And we already told you there will be radiofemoral delay and there will be delay in radial to right radial to left radial in case of a pre-subclavian coarctation. So you will have a aortic knob, pre-subclavian dilatation and post-subclavian dilatation, giving rise to what we call as a figure 3 appearance. You will have a dilated collaterals, left subclavian depending upon where it is arising, whether it is pre-subclavian or post-subclavian coarctation. Now you can see this is post-subclavian. So left upper limb will receive normal blood flow. So in this case, you will have a pulse will be large volume in right and left upper extremity, and two lower limb, the pulse volume will be low. And this portion will be dilated, and this portion pre-stenotic and post-stenotic dilatation giving rise to figure 3 appearance, or we call aortic knob, will be figure 3. And because of increased pulsation in intercostal blood vessels, rib notching will be there. Increased work load on a left ventricle giving rise to hypertrophy and dilatation also. And secondary to this, you can have a left ventricular failure. And also because of increased demand, you can have a ischemic episodes. So obstruction, pressure hypertrophy of LV can go into left ventricular failure. Hypertension in upper limb, in lower limb decreased blood flow, low pulse volume, low blood pressure, systolic pressure will be lower, radiofemoral delay, collateral will develop between pre-stenotic and post-stenotic coarctation part, intercostal vessels are dilated, and because of that increased pulsation, rib notching, and because of dilatation of pre-stenotic and post-stenotic part, you will have a figure 3 sign, or we call as aortic knob will show you figure 3 sign. So collateral circulation, aneurysmal formation in intercostal blood vessels, coronary artery dilatation and tortuosity. Aortic valve can be bicuspid, and if it is bicuspid, very frequently it is stenotic valve. And whenever there is an aortic stenosis, you can get an ejection systolic murmur, crescendo decrescendo murmur based in aortic area. Very high chance of Berry aneurysms, and secondary to this, there is always a chance of subarachnoid hemorrhage. You can have an associated cardiac anomaly. Very frequently, the commonest anomaly is bicuspid aortic valve, and in case of a postductal variety, in that case, by and large, the duct is stenosed, or duct is atrophic, or we call it a ligamentum arteriosum. And if it is a preductal, then the PDA is very frequently patent to maintain the perfusion in lower limb. Also in a infantile variety, or in a what we call as a disconnection. So coarctate part is not connected to the distal part. Cut off. In that variety also, you can have other abnormality, like duct may be present, and duct is providing circulation from pulmonary artery into post-stenotic part. So that is very, very common. This is showing you how, because of that narrowing, the left ventricle will have a volume over, we call after overload, and because of increased resistance at the stenotic part, aorta is dilated and left ventricle also undergo dilatation plus hypertrophy. So this will be that narrowed part, this portion will be dilated, and there will be also dilatation of post-stenotic part. And depends on the severity of stenosis, you will have a collaterals. And because of that collaterals, you will have an intercostal artery dilated, maybe tortuous, even sometimes aneurysmal dilatation, increased pulsation, rib notching, etc. So all those things can be seen. You can see this is because of a tight narrowing. You've got a dilated intercostal vessels. The most frequent intercostal vessel is second, third, and fourth. They are maximally dilated, and that will provide a circulation to the descending aorta portion. We already mentioned the incidence of congenital heart disease as far as coarctation is concerned, 5 to 8%. Almost in 82% of the time, it is isolated. Ratio in male to female is 2:1. In 11% of the time, it is associated with VSD. Other cardiac abnormality like ASD, PDA, it is 7%. Complex cardiac abnormality is not very, very common. Survival is 15% in neonates. 85% of the child who survives without operation, and then if you provide them surgical intervention, the life expectancy will be increased. Bacterial endocarditis is not very common, but still you can get a bacterial endocarditis. Aortic rupture is very common in second and third decade. Subarachnoid hemorrhage is also very common because of presence of Barry aneurysm, which is a very, very common associated features along with coarctation. The cause of death in coarctation is very frequently because of congestive heart failure, almost in 25% of the people. Infective endocarditis, 25%. Spontaneous rupture of aorta, almost close to 20%. And intracranial hemorrhage, 10 to 15%. So, commonest cause of death is congestive heart failure, bacterial endocarditis, and rupture, which will be accounting for nearly, you can, if you put all them together, nearly 80 to 85%. So, that will be the most common cause, and then another is intracranial hemorrhage. If it is a very mild variety, good number of time it is asymptomatic and is detected late during lifetime. In right upper limb, usually you will have a hypertension. Because of increased blood flow and increased pressure in a common carotid vessels, the person will have a headache. Occasionally can have epistaxis. Because of hypertension and increased workload on left ventricle has undergone hypertrophy. So we will have a cardiomegaly, palpitation, and occasionally they can go into left ventricular failure if there is a tight coarctation. If there is an associated aortic stenosis because of bicuspid valve, then you can have an ejection systolic murmur, very nicely heard in an aortic area, crescendo decrescendo murmur, and it can be right from grade 3 to grade 6. Occasionally, mitral stenosis may be associated feature. We already mentioned patent ductus arteriosus will be very common in a what we call as a preductal variety of coarctation. Systolic pressure in upper limb is more than lower limb. By and large, the diastolic pressure is normal. If there is a tight stenosis in a lower limb, you will get intermittent claudications. Right radial to right femoral, there will be always radiofemoral delay. And if it is a very tight stenosis and if there is an aortic interruption, then femoral pulse may be nearly absent. In case of a pre-subclavian variety of coarctation, there will be radial delay. Means right radial will be nicely palpable and there will be little delay in a left radial pulse. In a variety where there is a what we call as a postductal, by and large the PDA is closed or we call ligamentum arteriosum. Now intercostal blood vessels in these conditions are markedly dilated, increased collaterals. So that will give rise to pulsation in intercostal artery. That we call as the Sussman signs. You can hear a harsh systolic murmur at the stenotic part, at the collaterals, and also over the coarctate part as well as collaterals. We have already told you if there is a reversal, because the blood flow now from pulmonary artery is flowing into aorta, because the pulmonary pressure is more than aortic pressure. So deoxygenated blood is going into descending aorta. You will have a differential cyanosis in two lower limbs, particularly in a variety where you got a tight coarctation, or if blood is flowing from PDA into post interrupted aorta part, that is the descending aorta. In that case, you will have a differential cyanosis and clubbing seen in a lower limbs, two lower limbs. In presence of Berry aneurysm, a person can develop a subarachnoid hemorrhage or an intracranial hemorrhage. And if there is a very tight coarctation, person can also develop left ventricular failure followed by a right ventricular, we call congestive heart failure in a tight variety. So these are a lot of symptoms which can be there depending upon mild to severe variety. Usually symptoms are absent with a mild coarctation. That's why we call as asymptomatic. But in a person who is going into left ventricular hypertrophy and left ventricular dilatation, the person starts complaining of dyspnea on exertion, poor appetite, failure to thrive, trouble while feeding, dizziness, shortness of breath, fainting episodes, chest pain, fatigue, intermittent claudication, arterial hypertension in right upper limb, and low blood pressure in lower limb, weak pulse in femoral, dorsalis pedis, posterior tibial, all those are weak, radiofemoral delay. If it is a very tight stenosis, femoral pulse may be absent. There is a big gradient between the upper limb and lower limb. Left ventricular hypertrophy will start producing a forceful apex. A bruit may be palpable and also thrill may be audible. You will be getting a systolic murmur over the stenotic part, and also you can hear sometime a bruit and palpable thrill over even dilated intercostal vessels in increased collaterals. Because of hypertension, headache, because of lack of blood supply in the coronary blood vessels, and increased demand, chest pain, fatigue. Person can also develop intracranial hemorrhage or subarachnoid hemorrhage secondary due to Berry aneurysm rupture. Claudication is quite common. We already told you femoral artery will be weak or may be absent, and murmur may be palpable, or we call thrill may be palpable at the stenotic part posterior. You can see this differential cyanosis, which will be very common features. That cyanosis will be much clearer in two lower limbs, and you will have no cyanosis in upper limb. This is called typical differential cyanosis, because from PDA, the deoxygenated blood from pulmonary circulation is entering into descending aorta and supplying lower limb. So you will have a cyanosis plus clubbing, which will develop very fast. Very frequently we say that in a severe variety, person can come to you in a shock stage. In a moderate variety, usually they come with LVF and then with CHF. While in a mild variety, usually headache and intermittent claudication is common. In a severe variety, femoral pulse will be almost absent and blood pressure in lower limb may not be detectable. We have already shown this particular slide that incidence is 5%, isolated coarctation is almost in 82%, male to female ratio is 2:1. In 11% of coarctation you can have a VSD, and other anomalies or complex anomaly is not very common. It is less than 7% of coarctate part. Survival is 15% in neonatal variety. 85% of the time, if it is detected late, means if it is a mild variety, then usually even without operation they survive. And 65% of the person after third decade of life, they can survive. 2% survival at 60 years. Bacterial endocarditis is common. Aortic rupture is common in second and third decade, which is a dangerous one. Subarachnoid hemorrhage because of a Barry aneurysm is also common, where mortality rate will be high. So these are all the different findings you can come across. This is in infancy, this is in childhood, this is in adult, and this is associated symptoms, that is symptom signs of Turner syndrome. Occasionally you can have a von Recklinghausen disease, Noonan syndrome can be there, or also you can have a finding of congenital rubella syndromes, etc. This is what we call on cardiovascular system examination, LVH. Symptom signs finding of a left ventricular failure may be present. Cardiomegaly, left ventricular hypertrophy, even there will be mild dilatation of left ventricle. You will have a murmur in aortic area because of bicuspid aortic valve and aortic stenosis. You will be also be able to palpate a thrill and audible at coarctate part posteriorly, and also if there are markedly dilated intercostal blood vessels, you will be able to hear a systolic sound, we call it a systolic murmur. While in an ECG you will have a good amount of LVH with ischemic changes. This will be the typical X-ray. In an X-ray you will get an LVH with rib notching. You can see this is a rib notching. This is a notching of the rib. Usually you will see in a second, third and fourth intercostal ribs in a lower border, because intercostal blood vessels will erode here. So they enter at that side, and because of increased pulsation you will get a rib notching. And as far as aorta is concerned, you will get sign of 3. We will show you in further X-ray. ECG you will see an LVH with ischemia, and you can do a CT combined with angio to find out the severity, site, collaterals, any other anomaly, etc. Doppler can be another useful to find out the site, size, severity of coarctate part. That is another easy investigation. So you can see this rib notching. You can see clearly rib notching. And this is LVH, and this is called sign of 3. Pre-stenotic dilatation, post-stenotic dilatation. Because of that, we'll have a further, you can see this is a pre-stenotic notch, and again post-stenotic dilatation. So this is coarctate portion, and this is pre-coarctate, this is post-coarctate, and this is a rib notching. You can see a rib notching here. You can see this rib notching. So rib notching will be also seen along with that. This is pre-stenotic dilatation, this is a post-stenotic dilatation. Figure of 3 dilatation it is called, or aortic knob. Figure 3 aortic knob. Again typical, pre-stenotic, post-stenotic dilatation. And along with that you will get an LVH also. And when you do an angio, you can see that there is a narrowing here, and this is increased collaterals. Increased collaterals, and this is a narrowed part. And this is a pre-stenotic dilated part, and you can have a post-stenotic dilated part. You can see here that is stenotes part, these are increased collaterals, this is dilated part, and this will be the dilated part of a pre-stenotic part dilatation. So this can be easily. ECG will show you left ventricle, right ventricle will not be common. In an infantile variety, you can have a right ventricle, or we call as a right plus left biventricular hypertrophy. So this is very characteristic in V1 deep S wave, and in V4, V5, V6 we will have a tall R wave. You have to differentiate from pseudocoarctation, which is very commonly secondary due to atherosclerosis. So try to differentiate from that particular part. Atherosclerotic variety. Also, you should try to differentiate from another group, what we call as a Takayusu disease. So that could be differential and aneurysmal dilated portion. So this is pseudocoarctation, we call pseudocoarctation, which is not characteristic of, you can see this pseudocoarctation. This is the atherosclerotic vessel. There is no ideally a narrowing, or you might get narrowing secondary due to atherosclerosis or maybe because of arthritis like Takayusu. Now prostaglandins will be required if you want a PDA to remain present. And PDA is required to be present very frequently in what we call as preductal coarctation. So in that case, you want a patent duct to remain patent. So you might need to give prostaglandins. Most common repair what you require is resection of the narrowed part with reanastomosis if it is a very, very tight stenosis. Nowadays, if it is a mild to moderate variety, catheter, balloon dilatation, and then you can put a stent in that area. Surgical complications is quite common because you can damage kidney due to clamping of blood flow during surgery. Suddenly you can have high blood pressure post-surgical, which needs to be controlled by antihypertensive drugs. If there is an associated aortic valve abnormality, you might need a treatment for infective endocarditis, prophylactic treatment, prophylactic antibiotic for prevention of infective endocarditis. So prostaglandins is needed to maintain the duct patent. Surgical intervention is required to prevent a left ventricular dysfunction. Angioplasty may be required in person if it is a mild and can be done as a catheter angioplasty. Reconstruction or recoarctation can occur following a balloon angioplasty. So angioplasty with stent is a better option. So in a surgery, aortic resection and end-to-end anastomosis, patch aortoplasty, left subclavian flap angioplasty, bypass graft repair. Now this is more preferred unless the person has got a very tight and severe aortic stenosis. In that case only you require other variety of surgery. But by and large, in a mild to moderate variety, balloon angioplasty with stent is adequate enough. So resection, end-to-end anastomosis, patch, prosthetic interpostellar graft, resection with end-to-end anastomosis, subclavian flaps, bypass graft, and balloon dilatation angioplasty is the most common procedures which is being done. Now you can see here, this is you cut off and then you do end-to-end anastomosis. This is permanent correction. You can see you cut off this particular stenotic part and anastomose this portion with this portion. And particularly this should be done by interrupted suturings. You can suture up this to end, or you can go for what is called as a flap. You can have ligation of left subclavian artery and do a flapping parts. Here you can use a prosthetic material for that particular reconstruction of that coarcted part. This is bypass graft. From ascending aorta you can directly have a connection to a descending portion, that is called bypass graft, and it is made up of a Dacron material very commonly. Bypass grafts were described by Jacob, so this is also called as a Jacob surgery. This is another way of a instead of end-to-end anastomosis, you connect a subclavian to descending aorta by means of a bypass graft. You can see here, this is a balloon angioplasty, a catheter is placed, this is dilated, and following a balloon inflation, and then you put a stent and correction is done. But this will be possible only in a mild variety, not in a severely tight variety. In that particular case and long segment also, you cannot go for a stent implant. Following a surgery, there are a lot of complications: recoarctation, paradoxical hypertension, paraplegia, recurrent laryngeal nerve injury, left arm ischemia, hemorrhage, aneurysmal formation, chylothorax, Horner syndrome, phrenic nerve injury, or also you can, because of a rebound hypotension or paradoxical hypertension, you can have a stroke. As far as complication because of coarctation is concerned, very frequently left ventricular failure followed by congestive heart failure, dissection of aorta, hypertensive complications, particularly subarachnoid hemorrhage and intracranial hemorrhage because of a Berry aneurysm. Person can develop a chronic renal failure, persistent hypertension, and following a correction, you can have a recoarctation. After stenting, block, rupture, what we call as a paradoxical hypertension, and all these complications are quite common. So, residual coarctation, recurrent coarctation, systemic hypertension, coronary artery damage, progressive valve disease, bicuspid stenosis, bicuspid regurgitation, aortic aneurysm, infective endocarditis are other complications. So I end my lecture here. I hope this will be helpful to you. Occasionally you might see once in a while a person with coarctation. We see you in the next lecture.